let's do anti-Zionism. Religious anti-Zionism. I didn't put Notori Carter here because they make much more noise than they're worth. There's only about 6,000 of them in the whole world. They're just always on the news because they know how to be prominent. But they share a number of traits with the three movements we're going to look at. A few of them might actually surprise you. These are all great rabbanim, by the way. Like the rabbis, the anti-Zionist rabbis that we're about to meet together are among the greatest of our religious and spiritual leaders ever in Jewish history. You'll notice one of them was the Rebbe of Lubavitch. We'll get to him last. The first, Satmar. You've heard of Satmar Hasidah? Okay. So Satmar is renowned for being strictly anti-Zionist, by a matter of policy. So Rav Yoel titled down, the Divrei Yoel. He said that he saw through the veneer of what the secular Zionists were doing. And he paid very close attention when people like Herzl, again, they didn't do themselves any favours. You can't go on a state visit, traipsing around Palestine, following Kaiser Wilhelm on a horse, and expect that no one's going to notice you're doing that. So the Satmar Rebbe, from day one, was sceptical. What are the real motives of these secular Zionists? Again, are they only interested in saving Jews, or do they care about Judaism? In fact, he built that a level deeper and said, I think, he said, they're not even interested in saving Jews. What do they want to do?
Save themselves.
They want to assimilate. And he pointed, for example, to the fact that Theodor Herzl had 3 children, very tragic stories, all of them, deeply, deeply tragic and troubled stories. Herzl had a son called Hans, and Herzl, with his wife, refused for Hans to have Brit Milah. Later on, Herzl died when Hans was still quite young. Hans was baptized and converted and became Catholic. And the Satmar Rebbe said, remember we said reform earlier? He said, what is this incubator called Israel meant to do? You put a baby in an incubator. What emerges at the other side of it? What's left anymore? So, he was deeply skeptical that the only reason the Zionists want to save Jews is that they can assimilate and become, eventually, not Jewish at all. Convert. Just melt into society. He predicted that Zionism would lead to the spilling of Jewish blood, mainly at the hands of our enemies. He said, I can't see any version of this project that doesn't lead to multiple wars. Difficult to disagree with that. He also predicted that there would be internal bloodshed, that there would be Jews spilling Jewish blood. Okay. He also was deeply opposed to religious Zionism that we just encountered, which he saw as actually misinterpreted. Remember we said earlier, Kalisha and the other leading Rabbanim, they're interpreting Torah sources as saying you're allowed to hasten the redemption. Yeah, you're allowed to push the agenda. The Satmar Rebbe says, but I've got just as many sources that say it's actually a terrible idea to play God and to set the agenda for him and decide, now is the time for the redemption. To which a voice from heaven says, I'm sorry you're waiting so long, but it's not. Maybe it's not. So this becomes essentially the Satmar policy. His stance is, to their credit, I say, they're the most consistent. They're completely disengaged from the state. Okay, so there's plenty of Satmar Hasidim living in Israel, particularly in Bnei Brak and Jerusalem. They officially, as far as I know, they don't pay taxes.
That's so funny.
They don't take benefits.
It doesn't matter, but they live there. They have benefits of protection from the land. The bins are being collected.
I know.
There's no bombs.
I know.
It's a little bit.
Zeloni.
It's a little bit about the Muslim people coming here and saying, "But we don't want to listen to your laws.
It's extremely
different. We want to do our own laws here." What do you mean?
Yeah, 100%. Again, we all have our positions on this.
I mean, he might have really good. He might have good, beliefs, but then don't live in Israel at all. Make all you people not live in Israel.
So again, Odell, important.
Bar them. Say, do not live in Israel.
Important to remember historically, the old Yishuv, that's never spoken about. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Don't hate me for saying this. The old Yishuv which is the original Zionists, before Zionism was political. These are the followers of the old Hasidic masters, the students of the Vilna Gaon. These are deeply religious Haredi and Hasidic Jews who moved there. They were the first really to live and try and settle on swamps and deserts. They see, don't jump down my throat, they see the creation of the state of Israel along the same lines as the native Arab population, which is, who on earth are you, and why on earth have you taken away our life and our land? Yeah? We can disagree, but it's a similar, their position is that if Zionism is built, which it is, on some sort of belief, whether that's a historical or religious belief, or a cultural belief, whatever it's built on, if Zionism is built on the belief that the land of Israel is special to the Jewish people, we're Jews, we can live here too. And no state or political fabrication can stop us from living here. It's quite a good point. Now, practically, does it make sense? Probably not, but ideologically, it's difficult to argue with it. Let's look at the Gera Rebbe. Rav Avraham Mordechai Alter of Ger, which is now the largest Hasidic movement. It counts hundreds of thousands of members. It's very powerful. He founded Agudas Yisrael, which is the, remember we said, there's this Mizrahi. Mizrahi is the religious Zionist political movement. Agudas Yisrael is the Haredi political movement that doesn't follow Satmar. Satmar disengages and says, we wash our hands of this madness. Agudas Yisrael says, we got to engage. We can't stop Zionism. We can't stop the world from changing. It's too big and moving too quickly to change it. So we're going to become what we call agnostic. Yeah? Which means, like, we're definitely not pro, but we're not anti to the degree that we're totally detached from the state. We're going to create our own political party, and what this party will do is, essentially, it will only defend and represent the interests of the Haredi community. Okay? Which is how we've ended up in a situation where, if you're following Israeli politics, what constantly comes up in the news and causes riots and
being drafted.
The draft law. Yeah, which is, we're not interested in being drafted into the army because, yes, we're kind of here and we're kind of politically engaged, but we want to be politically engaged, but only on our terms. It's difficult. I struggle with this, and I understand why they do it.
They also believe that you need both. You need the Torah learning, which protects them, and then you need the guns.
It's difficult. No, it's difficult. I struggled with it. I lived in some Haredi areas, pretty much. I lived in a very Haredi area for 4 years, and so I genuinely believe that learning Torah properly and tefillah, davening properly, for sure protects us and protects Jews everywhere. I believe that firmly. But I was always troubled by what I saw a little bit as, like, you want to have your cake and eat it. You know, like, you want all the benefits of statehood, but none of the sacrifices of it. Yeah. Because, at least from what I saw, there were never, maybe it's changing now, I don't think it is.
Because it's the same as the Haredi and the Reform. The moment you open up, then they can
it comes from the same place.
To the other side.
Which is my next point,
so
which is
why
why
they keep so close.
Correct.
So they don't even want to think about them being, they just don't
integrating
want to
at all.
see
Yeah,
this world.
yeah. It's why you'll never see any.
Because there's girls in the army. And
well, no, there are no alternatives either that are being presented. Like, there are 100 ways that any group can give to its country or give back to its state. It doesn't need to go and fight in a mixed unit. But none of those compromises are ever considered, because again, there's this paranoia, as it were, and fear about any sort of change, which we discovered when we looked at reform and etc. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, one of them, one of the earlier ones. Again, what's significant about him? Satmar Rebbe is Romania. Okay, the Gera Rebbe is Poland. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, however, is Russia. So it takes us back to where the worst suffering was. He predicted, and I didn't believe this until I went to Israel, and I heard it from so many Israeli people, he predicted that any sort of political or nationalist movement would morph into a religion in and of itself. And he predicted a time where Zionism would replace Judaism as the religion of the Jewish people. He said, and I quote, "After this assumption is accepted, anyone who enters the movement regards himself as no longer obliged to keep the commandments of the Torah, nor is there any hope, consequently, that at some time or another he will return, because according to his own reckoning, he is a proper Jew, and that he is a loyal nationalist." Okay? I didn't believe this until I heard it with my own ears from many, in fact, including from a relative of mine who lived in Israel and was challenging me on why do you keep Shabbos, and why do you keep kosher, and why do you wear tzitzis still? I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, this is the best place to do it. I can do it here and feel free. I don't get stared at. I don't get, shouted at in the street. This is the best place to do it. And my relative said, but I don't understand. Like, once you live in Israel and you support the land of Israel and you're Zionist, you're exempt from all the mitzvot. And I was like, what? No. This is like, there's 200 mitzvot that I can keep here that I can't keep in England. Like,
is that ignorance, or is that people really believe that?
yeah. Genuine. It's a genuine belief, and we will get shortly into how it's now manifested in Middle England, because it has, and we have to understand that our children are seeing through it. I'll be careful what I say.
Or was this kids at Jewish school don't need to do anything anymore outside of that?
Well, we'll get back to
It's
it.
good enough for
Susie,
you.
it's human psyche. So once you've got an ideology, once you've got a rallying point, and that rallying point gives you focus, and you have to make sacrifices for it, and you have to behave in a certain way to be a part of it, it takes on all the characteristics of a religion.
See, I don't get that. I'm aware it happens, obviously, just like you, and I've seen it. But I don't. So, for example, if you are a capitalist or a socialist, you could still be vegetarian. You don't go, oh, I've become this, so I have to drop that. I don't understand what it is, and it's not explained in what we just went through either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there is a reason behind it. I just don't think I've heard it yet. Why it is that ism negates, contradicts, and eliminates that ism, because other isms don't always.
I think they do. I think this manifests it manifests. This is just human psychology. It manifests even in totally mundane, laughable things where we see, for example, sadly another world that I understand, football becomes a religion for people. They will sacrifice.
Well, I don't understand that either. So. I can work on it.
Adam is just a higher evolved, beyond this. We as humans need to feel in Judaism. The term is lehiraot. Odell, how would you? Yeah, lehiraot is. It's one of the main. It's spoken about when we speak about the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and the Torah is clear about this: is that we need to feel like we're in the presence of greatness, and we are contributing to something great, and we're doing noble things and sacrificing for virtuous reasons. But as humans, anything can plug that gap. And what's dangerous, said the Lubavitcher Rebbe about Zionism, is that it's not football. It's really meaningful. It's really important.
Even
It's
when
not
half
something
of the Zionists
stupid.
are religious Zionists, that's still that you'd think that would inoculate them from thinking Zionism itself was a religion. Because
It's not going to who?
So though we talked earlier on about secular Zionists and religious Zionists.
Yes.
For those who are religious Zionists,
Religion. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Surely they wouldn't feel that the Zionism replaces a religion, because in fact their religion was the reason for their Zionism.
It's much more dangerous. It's much more dangerous.
That's the how I need to understand, because I don't understand.
I think you do.
So the religion is
What do
driving
we-
them to be Zionist, but once they've achieved their goal, the pressure's been
So which group?
the religious Zionists.
Religious Zionists. Have we fulfilled the goal?
So they could then end up becoming more secular
Have we
Zionists.
fulfilled the goal? No, they don't want to become secular Zionists. Religious Zionists want.
Religious Zionists.
Right, but you're saying that
I'm saying, how could they become these Jews who think that because they live in Israel they don't have to keep kosher or something?
yeah.
like
So
that?
is he saying that
Since
the
their
Zionism
Zionism
secular
was
Zionist?
since their Zionism came from religion, how could they get confused?
So it's far more subtle. And sadly, nowadays, we might as well step directly. Let's finish the fourth group and then get into, hopefully, the messier stuff. I'll summarise the final group, which is the secular anti-Zionists. The middle figure, Jacob Israel de Haan, a very, very complicated person who changed his banners every 5 years or so and ended up becoming very Haredi and working with the Haredi anti-Zionists. He was actually assassinated by the Haganah, which was and they denied all knowledge and responsibility of it until 1952. A stain on our people's history, largely because it opened the door to the idea that a political assassination, Jew against Jew, remember the prediction that Jewish blood will be spilt by Jews? It opened the door, unfortunately, to what happened to Yitzhak Rabin. It said, you know what, if someone's causing enough trouble and getting in the way of the Zionist religion enough, take them. Yigal Amir. Yigal Amir was a disturbed individual, but came from that hotbed of, and I think, Adam, this is your point, is what do I do when my Zionist aspirations contradict my Jewish values? My Jewish values clearly state, I'm sure Yigal Amir had the same Torah as you and I do, where the Ten Commandments say, Lo tirtzach, thou shalt not murder. So then, well, then what happened? How do we get from A to B? How did Rabin die? It says, it's not even a minor mitzvah, it's the one everyone knows. Yeah? So how did that happen?
Well, yeah, but you could say he's a criminal, he's irrational. Not that it came from a religious base or a political base or
He had almost no criminal record prior to this. He had problems.
Yeah.
He was quite unstable, but it's one of the reasons it happened. He wasn't known to authorities and how he got to where he did and so close with access.
No, I know all about the practical side of it because I've studied it, but I don't know the political justification.
So this is the warning. That what can happen is that well, one second I've got my Jewish religion and then my Zionist religion, and actually sometimes they're going to contradict each other. What takes preference? And the warning of the religious anti-Zionists was that what's going to start to happen among secular Jews is Zionism is going to become the be-all and end-all. Judaism. That's going to replace. But what's slightly more dangerous is because it's more nuanced, is among the religious Zionists, you may end up with a situation where Zionism supersedes Judaism, and what's important for my Zionist aspirations takes preference over my Jewish values. And that can manifest, and forgive me for being a little bit controversial, and it is on camera, but if you're looking at what the fringe of the religious Zionists are doing in the settlements, it's not Jewish. And I've been approached very quietly by many of our members after Kiddush, and luckily, because I stay very apolitical at the pulpit, I don't feel pressured to say, because they say you should be condemning it, and I say, look, I don't speak out about anything really, so you can't pin me down on one thing. But yeah, in private, it's sickening. Now, we acknowledge it's a fringe. There's a fringe, an extremist fringe that represents a fraction of a percentage of the religious Zionists, but where did it come from? And why is it that these youngsters, mainly youngsters, feel that their behaviour is justified? It's clearly not in line with Jewish values, but it's clearly in line with their Zionist values. And one has overridden the other. And what's dangerous about it, Adam, is that God bless them, they believe that what they're doing is a mitzvah. That's what's even worse. It's like, this is Judaism. You see it?
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Is it not a natural thing that happens? Because here, let's say in Britain, you've got the British values and the people who would fight for that, and they're not fighting for, let's say, all the different religions that used to be in England. So they've left religion and they're fighting it as a state, as a British value thing, where really it used to be, basically we become scholar everywhere. Like England is secular. So nobody's fighting now because the Pope said in Christianity, but they fight for the English values. So Zionism is like, we're fighting for Zionism as a country rather than a religion. So it's more like And that's why they feel like we're British, but we don't have to be Christian like we used to.
You're right, but I'm saying it still takes on characteristics that are identical to what a religion would have.
It replaces the religion, but
It's
doesn't
the same.
become a religion.
It's because it's human nature that we are self-righteous and we think we know everything and we want to live meaningful lives and we don't want people to be in our way when we live meaningful lives. These are all the same hallmarks of religious people that have to also work really hard to control them. Any movement, any ideology, any ism has this in common. People going completely overboard. I'll use another, sorry if it's a painful example, but I was struck during COVID by how, obviously, you have to follow medical guidelines, but for some people, it became an act of religious duty. Sorry for putting that down. You're doing the same thing, you're same sanitizer, same distance, same mask. The one's doing it, okay, I've got to do it, I've got to be responsible, and the other one's doing it like a priest, with zeal and with this,
and look down at you if you did
Yeah.
anything wrong. You
Yeah.
killed me.
Yeah, I'm sure we all got shouted at and challenged by people who are being, and I get it, okay, people are scared.
So it's
But it's
human
human nature that we
something.
want to feel like I'm part of something big, I'm in the presence of greatness, and don't stand in my way. So, secular anti-Zionism, essentially, I'll summarise it, one of the reasons why it never caught on and never stayed is because these were the genuinely self-hating Jews. These were people who framed anti-Semitism. These were, again, mainly Russians. They said anti-Semitism isn't a unique problem. It's an outgrowth of the general struggle against
Judaism.
capitalism. This is part of our struggle as the proletariat. This is part of our socialist dream, and we need to bring socialism. Many of the Bundists believe this. If we can get a revolution that's socialist, we're going to rid the world of all of its evils, and one of those evils happens to be anti-Semitism. Okay? But nonetheless, within the secular anti-Zionists, you have people who, because they were so politically involved, were actually politically very clever. And a number of them warned, A, against nationalism and what that could become, B, against proceeding without really negotiating properly with the native Arab population and what that could lead to. And then C, also again, that are we really solving anti-Semitism, they said, or are we just giving our enemies a victory? Which is a question that's also not really... This is now being discussed here, because again, we're seeing a lot more British Jews making Aliyah. Is Aliyah a solution to anti-Semitism? No, you're just moving the problem. Yeah, you're just brushing the problem, yeah.
Or making it harder for people who are staying, because we become the
And become smaller, we're less represented, so it's not really a solution to anti-Semitism. So the secular anti-Zionists said, stay and fight, and it's going to hurt. Again, these are revolutionaries. These are revolutionaries in the Russian Revolution. They're used to fighting, and they're used to dying for any cause, and they said, stay, stand your ground, and fight, and solve anti-Semitism. Don't run away from it, solve it where you are. That's their main critique. Okay?
I'm interested in how all these people got their messages out. I know some of them wrote papers and books, but obviously there was no
Yeah,
social
like without
media.
WhatsApp and yeah.
Exactly.
I know.
No, but they're all in different countries.
I know.
They're all saying different. It's incredible.
It is incredible.
The power, how they did it.
Step one, Lucy, is that in those days people read. Yeah, people looked for things. They published essays and articles in newspapers and circulars and things, and I don't know, people...
But did most Jews?
And there were also political meetings.
There were big political
People would
meetings.
go to
There
their
were,
town or their shul and there'd be a speaker and he'd thump the table
and they'd go on for hours.
And it would have taken months or years for their message to get out.
It would have. But journalists would go to these... Nowadays, journalists are just looking for sleaze and scandal. In those days, they'd go to these meetings and report on the meetings. There were Jewish newspapers in Russian, in Polish, in Yiddish that were spreading these ideas. And yeah, it's very, very interesting how they spread. And for the time it happened, they actually spread quite quickly, considering they didn't have mass communication. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. So each of these four strands has clear strengths, clear weaknesses, clear problems. What do we say to our children? And let's finish off with this. Section F. What do we say to our children? Okay, so hopefully by now, just any questions before we dive into the final section? Lucy, you have one? You got any others? Carl, you got any questions? Okay. What do we say to our kids? Okay, I hope this synopsis, we've summarised 150 years of Zionism in an hour and 11 minutes, so it's not bad. I hope it's made clear that Zionism itself isn't clear. And I think you could ask everyone in this room, what does Zionism mean to you? We'd probably get slightly at least different answers from people. It's one of the reasons why, and I have no sympathy for those who hide behind anti-Zionism when they're really anti-Semites, but it's one of the reasons why it's so hard to actually define, like, what is just political protest and what's anti-Semitism. It's very, very difficult to do so. And this goes on constantly in debates in modern-day Britain as well. So how do we explore this with our children in a safe and non-judgmental way? Okay, there's three golden rules. They're all obvious, but sometimes things that are obvious are not actually easy to navigate. Golden rule number 1, unlike us, our children are bombarded. They are besieged by information or disinformation. No one knows the difference anymore. Who knows what it is they're actually absorbing from their social media channels, YouTube, online. I don't know about you, I've said this before, when we started this series, I think all of us were largely, think about the opinions you heard when this was developing and forming. For me, it was my parents, my grandparents, my best friends, and my teachers. Anyone else? I don't know if there's anyone who was just like incredibly popular, had a TV series that none of us knew about. Yeah?
Gossip from the community sometimes.
Maybe, yeah, a little bit in shul, maybe, but our children are growing up in a world where everyone's opinion is their opinion. And then they're expected to notice this and pay attention to it. There's also the social media fallacy, which is if you see a post or a video on TikTok or on X or whatever it is, and it has 10,000 reshares, retweets, what does your brain tell you?
Must be true.
Must be true, because look at that little 10.7k at the bottom. We never take that step back and go, well, 1 second, 10,000 people, you know, that's like a League Two stadium when it's full. There's nothing, the grand scheme of things. So they are bombarded by opinions, and they are duped into thinking that those opinions are true and valid and, more importantly, valuable. Number 2, Israel itself has changed. We have to recognise this. Okay, and I see this the whole time, even from between me, I'm nearly 40, between me and I speak to some of our older members, and I see Israel to them is still different because it always was different. They grew up when Israel was genuinely at threat of being eradicated from one day to the next. I'm not saying Israel's not under any threat, of course it is, but existential threat, where it could be gone, think about the Yom Kippur War, like when it could be gone, as far as we know, those days are behind us. Israel was also, I don't know, it still was when I was a kid. It was exciting and mysterious and adventurous, and you'd get off the plane at the old Ben Gurion airport and there'd be the rugby scrum, yeah? So everyone running across the tarmac, pushing and shoving, and there's no real proper check-in, and no one knows where the luggage has gone, and the heat hits you, and there's the banana, you know, the palm trees, and you've gone in the wrong door, but no one cares, and there was that certain mystique to the land of Israel. For our children, they've grown up in the world where Israel is, it's just is, yeah? It's normal. It's like it's just Istanbul, it's just there. Yeah, it's there. It's always been there. Like, that's all I've ever known. And if I want to visit, yeah, we'll just hop on a plane and we'll go now, Terminal Shalosh, yeah? We'll go to Terminal 3 with air conditioning, and something that resembles passport control. Yeah? Like, this is incredible. So they've grown up in a world where Israel itself is very, very different. And then finally, I don't know, maybe I speak for myself when I say this, but I think this is shifting now, is that they're growing up in a world where supporting Israel comes at a much heavier cost than it did for us. I don't know about you guys, but at least what my parents tell me is post 6 Day War, which is when my parents were My dad was born in the late 50s, my mum was early 60s, so like post 6 Day War, Israel was the coolest thing in the world.
Oh, more longer than that. Person Tebby as well.
And Entebbe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the coolest dudes in the whole world. And people were just like so excited to meet. You met someone in the IDF, it was like meeting a malach, yeah? Like you meet an angel of God. He took pictures of, I remember doing it. My sister stood there, was next to some lieutenant, like he just wants to go and see his family for 5 minutes, and we were like, ah! You know, meanwhile Michael Jackson's over there, no one cares about Michael Jackson. David Beckham, Schmeckham, no one cares. I want a picture with an IDF soldier, yeah? And that has changed in the last 20 years where, unfortunately now, you see an Israeli soldier, you run. You don't want to be seen anywhere near them because you're worried what's going to happen. So
You don't post them on social media.
82. 82 is probably when it started to change. It's maybe picked up a little bit. It picked up with Oslo, and then really since I think the disengagement from Gaza, which worked out.
It's the Al-Aqsa Intifada.
Yeah, second intifada, and then the disengagement of Gaza, the creation of Hamas, and essentially having Israel's now a land of 3 states. You've got Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. And again, the world doesn't speak about that. The Palestinians are seen as this homogenous entity, but they're governed by 2 different people. So how do you look at them as the same? There's no way of one getting to the other either, which is another problem for another time. So it's become a much, much more complicated world for our children to support Israel. So again, let's go through the process together. Step 1, as we did with week 1 and week 2, is first analyse, where do I stand on these questions? What's my opinion about these things? What is Zionism to me? What actually does it mean? Where do I stand on that? And for our children, say, like, what does Israel mean to you? Apart from a place where we can go and have McDonald's, yeah, which we discussed, I think, last week. Apart from a place where you can get kosher McDonald's, like, is it deeper than that? If you look hard enough, yeah? Is it?
For my kids, it's very easy because I was born there, so it's
very easy. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the same
it's
as
obvious.
there in England.
And you probably have family they can
Yeah.
visit when they're there. Yeah. So for our children,
I think sometimes you can disengage from the politics.
100%.
Just say this is where I'm from.
I've spoken to so many youngsters who've just told me openly that Israel is the same as any other holiday destination, with good beaches, good food, good weather, interesting places to visit.
And they're totally attached.
Yeah, that's it. There's no like emotional connection. It's the same as going to Central America. It doesn't make any difference. But just can't have McDonald's there. That's a big difference. So, question 2 is: do we think that Israel, Zionism, is the best solution to anti-Semitism? If so, why is that? Next question, which again is borrowed from the religious and secular anti-Zionist world. We have to know where we stand on this question, and we can't be afraid of what our brains tell us is the answer to it. Where do we stand on the possibility that Zionism has inadvertently become a cause of anti-Semitism? That's not saying that the anti-Semitism is justified. It's not the same thing as saying that. It's saying, has it become unwittingly or wittingly, again, because there are some Israeli politicians, you have to understand and recognise this, there are current members of the Knesset who are, in their own weird way, totally delighted when there are attacks here in the United Kingdom, because what that does is justifies the project, increases Aliyah, empties Chutz La'aretz, populates the land of Israel, and fulfills the main aspiration. We'd be very naive to hide from that. And Netanyahu himself has given many speeches where he's stopped at expressing delight at what's happening, but he's clearly manoeuvring the situation to say, I told you so, you must all move over here.
In his next speech, he'll say that there's an existential threat against Israel, which is why he needs more money for Iron Dome, he needs this from the UN.
Quite possibly.
And he'll say that at the same time as Jews should come and live here.
Yeah, and they're two totally contradictory things. But again, and this was a question we didn't go into, and we explored a little bit the evangelical Christian side of things. Another critique that again our youngsters are now encountering so heavily, and this has shifted quicker than I ever thought it would, which is, does the world now perceive Israel as the 51st state? This is one of the strongest arguments about creating a homeland in a place that would always be difficult to do it. So go to Texas, go to Uganda, go to Madagascar, go to somewhere where there's no one living apart from King Julian, and just build your homeland there. If you build a homeland in the land of Israel, what are you going to need to get it off the ground and keep it surviving? You don't just need an army, you need a constant supply of arms, money and support. And where's that support coming from? It's coming from, and there's only so much in the Jewish community. We have amazing philanthropists among our number, some here, and most of them in North America. They don't have enough money to support a country. Yeah, they don't. So where's the money coming from? Foreign governments. Say the anti-Zionists, well then what does that do to Israel? Does it just become an outpost of the United States? I don't think I'm saying anything radical. These are questions that are going around social media the whole time.
Yeah,
the entire time.
Yeah, but they've been true since the 60s. The 50s, in fact.
Yeah, 100%.
So
and it was Russia before it was the United States. It was Russia right up until I think the 16th
But can
war.
you
with
not
the...
say that about every country? Every country relies on support. No country is self-supported on their own, no? Iran relies on America, and that's why they take
No,
weapons.
none are as overt. They will rely on trading and imports and exports, but...
No, it's the Cold War. So it's the way it works all over the world. It works in bits of South America, Central America, it works in Vietnam and Korea. You've got client state of Russia, and you've got China, and you've got a client state of America. And it's exactly the same. But in the Middle East, the client states with Jordan and Israel on one side, and Egypt
And then the Russians are
Syria,
Egypt, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And it is still a bit like that with Iran. Iran's now,
Yeah.
you know, with its proxies, and Israel is seen by many. This was the whole, you know, round two in Iran was the whole. It was everywhere on social media. Is Trump just a puppet for Netanyahu? This is what our youngsters are seeing. So, to our children, you know, do you think, would you want to move? Just ask the kids, would you want to move to Israel one day?
Every time they go on holiday, they want to stay.
But it's in their blood. It is slightly different. They probably
It's
feel
fun.
more at home.
Israel has some kind of fun energy and
It does.
belonging, and I think, you know, even if you detach yourself and you say, oh, you know, yeah, my mum comes from there.
Yeah.
When you come there, you do feel, and I think everybody does, not only if you're Israeli. Most people feel, if you're Jew, you do feel, you feel somehow connected.
I hope so.
I haven't spoken
Yeah.
to a lot.
No, I
but
hope so.
most.
I hope so.
So I think that is.
I think it's an interesting question to ask them. Like, would you consider? What would you do? What would you do if your mother and I said we're moving next year? Like, just gauge their response. Are they going to like leave the room crying, or are they going to be excited, or something in between that? An interesting question to discuss. Then ask to ourselves: is my Zionism more to me than just a reaction to anti-Semitism? This was Ginsburg, Achad Ha'am. This was Achad Ha'am's biggest critique of the political secular Zionists, where he said you can't just see it as a response to it. It has to come from a place of positivity, not just avoiding negativity. So does Zionism speak actually more to a positive Jewish identity? Do I think I could be a better Jew? Not just safe, not just a live Jew, a living Jew. Could I be a better Jew if I moved to the land of Israel? That's an interesting question.
I think that's a yes.
And to ask our children, yeah, like, do you think that Israel should stand for much more than just solving anti-Semitism? Similar question, which again, we've already discussed it, is if I had to make a choice between saving Jews but not Judaism, what would I do? Me. It's a much harder question. What would I have done back then in 1903, looking at the Kishinev pogrom? What would I have said? What would I have felt? Would I have made that sacrifice in that exchange or not? And then to our children to ask, do you think it's important for Israel to have a clear Jewish identity? Should it be, again, there's that flip, should it be a Jewish state or a state for Jews? Very different. And then probably the hardest question of them all for us to contemplate. God forbid, what would happen to my Jewish identity if Israel actually ceased to exist tomorrow? I wake up tomorrow and it has been wiped off the map, as our enemies would love to happen. What does that do to my Jewish identity? and to explore that question with our children. That's not easy. That's not easy. I've often thought about this to myself. Like, what would it? I'd be not hit for six. I think is that I'd be hit for six. I think it would take me a while to recover from it, but I think eventually I'd be okay. I don't know. And God forbid, we'd never need to contemplate this.
We've been okay. I mean,
But
we've
we've never lived it before, though. That's
no,
the thing.
saying, not individual. I'm saying as a Jewish identity was before Israel, will continue to be a Jewish identity.
So this is it's an interesting question. I said to you before that I'd get to this, and maybe we'll stop recording. We'll stop recording it now, so that we can be. Sorry, everyone who's going to watch this later, but you're not welcome.